that also is a huge component in longevity in this game is learning the movement patterns that work for you. And maybe there's not a good or bad exercise, but there is a damn good or bad exercise for you personally. Everyone has that movement that they know that you just think about doing, and like your shoulder pinches, or like you think about doing it and like your hip pinches or something, right? Or your back hurts. We need to kind of get the message across that it's not really a bad exercise. It's just maybe not for you at this time. So I could say that for me, the overhead dumbbell press, for some reason, gets my shoulder every time. So I moved to a landmine press. I haven't looked back. Like, I could probably do them, but I haven't needed to look back. Like, I just do my landmine presses, and then we're good to go. So yeah, definitely. I think once we build in that foundation of like those exercises that we know that we can kind of cycle through, not that we have to avoid, but just know that if we're going to try to add those back in, tiptoe around it and just kind of feel it out before we just kind of go in there, and don't get discouraged. Like if you're not progressing, or you're not increasing your load or sets or what have you on a certain exercise, and if it's pain that's holding you back, that's a whole different animal than if it's, you're just not progressing, you're just doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I know, at least for me anecdotally, I a big chink in my armor in my early bodybuilding career is my back. I mean, I had like no lats, I could get shredded. I could kind of somewhat pose them, but it was definitely my weak link, and I just kind of remember thinking at the time, how is it that I can't develop my back? I'm doing barbell rows, and I progressed from, 115 pounds all the way up to, I think at one point I was like doing 270 pounds, How is it that I've progressed all this time and I still am not seeing the development in my lats, that I want? And it for whatever reason or another, it's got away from doing barbell rows. I can't even remember why. But one thing I can say is that it doesn't matter if it's I return to it now and then do it for a while, or if I just randomly do it on some given week. I suck at barbell rows. It's like I can't use my back. I use too much momentum. I kind of look like I'm trying to do a half clean, with the bar. And then, I just kind of came to the conclusion, barbell rows are probably a great exercise for a lot of people. Bert did heavy barbell rows kind of in a semi-clean fashion for a long time, and he's arguably got a great back, But for me, I don't know why. I mean, it feels okay. I don't feel like a monkey humping a football or anything, but at the same time, I just suck at doing barbell rows. I went ahead and I started doing something that I've never really done before, and I've done it for like a year and a half now. I started doing just like a straight arm pull down, or like some people would call it a pullover, if you do it supine. I would introduce those here and there in the past in my training, but I never did it consistently. I would do it for like a block and then I get away from it, But now that I've been doing it for like a good solid couple of years and incorporating some quote unquote intensity techniques, even though that's not the true version of intensity, but doing mile rep sets, and pushing close to failure with short rest between clusters and things like that. I'll be damned if my lats don't feel like they're growing. I can get a pump in my lats, which I have never really gotten before. And the progress is really, really slow because it's basically an isolation exercise. But sure as shit, I'm kind of finding on these mile rep sets that I'm doing, I'm getting a few more reps here and there. I'm taking every set basically to either failure or I'm tapping out from the burn, but I'm getting a few more repetitions. And who knows, maybe I'll be able to graduate from that green band, to kind of that black band eventually, But that's a great point, that there's not maybe good or bad exercises per se. A lot of people, including Berto, can do great with bent over barbell rows. I can't do it. I kind of exhausted the progressive overload fashion, went to something that worked better for me. Like you said, Nick, hit Control Alt Delete, started over again, progression's happening again, kind of in a more subtle fashion.
So sometimes progressive overload is just, I guess, building a foundation of movements that basically like sweeps the whole floor. Like narrowing it down. That might take a few years. It might take a few years to finally get to the point where it's like, oh, okay, so all these movements here, they cover all my needs. They don't hurt me. and I can progress quite comfortably in them. So yeah, that's another way of progressing, and that might take 5 years for someone to figure out. That you know, like, okay, I used to, I don't know, squat maybe because I felt like I needed to do it, but holy crap, I'm like I'm 5'11" with super long femurs, and I just keep hurting my back once I get to a certain point, and you know, which is a quite a typical one. But yeah, excellent point. Sometimes just figuring out what are your tools in regards to exercises, I think that's a huge aha moment, and just that itself will unlock some progress. Absolutely.
Do you guys think exercise, like the choice of exercise, can be a way to progress? So in other words, like say the goal is a barbell back squat. Maybe we start with like a goblet squat if it's a newcomer to the gym, and then, or maybe we start with a hack squat and then go to a goblet squat and then go to maybe a front squat, and then maybe, do you think maybe that's like another type of way to progress, like just changing the complexity of the exercise?
Yeah, good question. I mean, that's kind of like what I did when I very, very first started, right? I was embarrassed to use the barbell, so I started on the Nautilus machine, maxed that out, then jumped over to the barbell bench press, right? So yeah, I think that a system like that is probably a way to progress. Right there, you're kind of talking about, you could progress for like a year, like you just said, going from a goblet squat to a dumbbell front squat to a barbell front squat to a high bar back squat, you know? Yeah, you're talking about years possibly of progression there. I think the tricky thing is when we get into that program hopping, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, you don't necessarily want to like progress and then not look back. But at the same time, I think if you do that, you still want to kind of incorporate a bit of what is working. Like if you've progressed to, heck, a safety bar squat, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with going back to a goblet squat. Maybe you can do goblet squats in a hypertrophy rep range or using myo reps or whatever. But I kind of feel like you don't want to abandon that safety bar squat either, or at least what has already kind of gotten you there, you know? Because yeah, there is kind of a form of progression in there. If you can make that goblet squat progress, and then maybe your safety bar squat has kind of been topped out and progression is super slow there, you know, and you got to follow kind of these really slow going, meticulous triple progression plans. You can maybe get in between those progression jumps doing your goblet squat or something like that in a higher rep range, or however you want to go about doing it. So that's the first thing that kind of comes to my mind, you know, when you kind of talk about that kind of progression. But Alberto's nodding his head. I know he's got a lot to say about this too.
The one thing I did want to add to that was, in that hypothetical situation, we're talking about if the barbell back squat was the goal for some reason, because we also don't want, just thinking about it now, we don't want people thinking like, well, I'm progressing my hack squat, great. Like, do I have to now progress to a back squat, a barbell squat? Like, am I holding myself back because I'm not under the bar? Like, every muscle magazine that I've read said the squat is the king of all exercises. So it's important to remember that if the goal is not to barbell back squat, the barbell back squat should not be the goal. You know, we can progress with a goblet squat pretty damn well. We could progress with split squats and hack squats. And so again, all coming back to what that goal is, and then how we define progress. Because if we don't know what the target is, you know, we don't know if we're hitting it or what to even aim at.
Yeah, good context. Yeah.